Hello all you funky people, Funky Monkey here, welcome to this special episode. Today I want to share some thoughts on the latest Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, so just be warned, there will be some spoilers, although I'll try to keep them to a minimum and just speak in general. And whenever I will be spoiling something, I will try and give a fair warning, just keep that in mind. Now for the pre-story checklist. I have my coffee in my mug, I have some wonderful tea in my mousse cup, I have my amazing two assistants, one of them is sleeping up there while the other is sleeping in the hallway in her cat tower, and I also have something for the soul, and by the color of it you can see it is magical. How about you? Are you ready to hear the thoughts of a D&D fantasy and history lover that has no XP in movie criticism whatsoever? Are you also comfy, cozy and with something tasty to drink on hand? Then I think it is time for some thoughts. Just to get this out of the way, I am by no means a movie critic, nor do I pretend to be one. These are just my personal thoughts and opinions on the latest Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, and you are free to disagree with them. I know I saw the first D&D movie in the early 2000s as a kid, but I don't really remember anything of it, so I won't even reference any previous D&D movies. Right off the bat, this, in my opinion, is an awesome movie, genuinely. Especially if you are into D&D. But the movie caters and entertains those who have no idea what D&D is, never played, and just want to watch a fun and quirky story unfold with a ton of jokes and even deep moments. But in the end, it captures the quintessence of a D&D adventure, although the whole story could be a campaign in its own rights. Now, let's talk about the story. The story is very simple and straightforward, reminiscent of a D&D adventure, where the party has a general direction but not necessarily a clear path to the BBEG, or perhaps even a clear path in general. They have a direction, but they don't even know who the BBEG is, and that makes it even more interesting. The story is more like a character arc or a redemption arc that leads to a lieutenant of the BBEG and the unveiling of the bigger plot. The story is nicely compacted to show in 2 hours the lengths at which a party goes to recover items, to find clues, to get allies, and basically the hardest part, coming up with a working plan. We are taken to many parts of the world, great forests, the Underdark, which to be honest was mind-blowing, at least for me. I've led my players to the Underdark in my campaign as well and tried to describe the massive caverns and the cities built there, the lost civilizations and the dangers that lurk in every nook and cranny. But I think I failed. Well, to be honest, not completely, but it is difficult to describe a cavern so tall that you cannot see its ceiling, housing a city that floats on rivers of magma. But the grandness of things like that are very well represented in this movie, at least for me. As a spoiler, I don't know if you know what the party is made up of when it comes to classes, but none of them really rely on intellect. Almost all members actually rely on charisma, and there is this amazing moment when this is very accurately represented by having 3 intellect devourers just pass the party by as if they didn't exist, as they did not sense any higher intellect among them. I was in tears, to be honest. It was a very nice, very funny moment that would amuse even those who are not in the know when it comes to D&D, but the comments the characters make before and after the encounter just explain the whole situation, explain why it is funny without making it cringy, and it is a nice, funny moment that kind of breaks the fourth wall, but not really. As I said, the story takes the party across the world and finishes off in Neverwinter, where I have to admit, I love the fact that large swaths of the city are only briefly shown. By doing this, I believe that it was the director's intention to show how utterly massive the city is, that even when parts of it are shown, you barely cover a small part of it, even when you have a bird's eye view. Again, awesome use of scale, something I struggle with when it comes to describing the cities in my world, to be honest. It's hard to relate the idea that a city has millions of inhabitants while trying to describe it, and the use of Neverwinter here, with its sheer massiveness, was a stroke of genius. And I think it helps most DMs and D&D players in general just get a picture of how big things really are. The only thing I personally think was missing from the movie was a shopping session, but to be honest, I think that would have been the whole movie. But yeah, I do enjoy a good shopping spree in my D&D games. Of course, the movie is also chock full of jokes, just like the ones player would throw around while at the table. The comments characters make help those who are not in the know when it comes to rules, aspects or tropes understand what's going on, and for those who are in the know, it makes it even funnier as it highlights things we might take for granted or do unconsciously. Like the scene with the intellect devourers, the characters are insulted by being ignored by those nasty little bastards. It helps the audience understand why it would be insulting, but it also helps us as D&D players actually identify this as being something we could use. Truthfully now, how many of you look at your player's stat blocks and decide that a creature that feeds on brains might ignore the party because all of them have intelligence as their dumb stat? I mean, that was golden. Or another moment that I found to be simply enthralling was the misunderstanding of how certain spells work, especially those that are not that often used, such as Speak with Dead, leading to weird, perhaps a little gruesome, but nonetheless funny situations. Bad rolls are also represented in a funny way, by showing how attempts at persuasion or deception fail, through the natural flow of the story told by the characters and the reaction of their audience. All the while, nat 20s are shown in a very interesting way, akin to what some dungeon masters, myself included, do when describing in great detail the failure or the success of a hit or an attempt at persuasion or deception. Of course, it is perhaps a little more difficult to show such a thing in an action movie, but during the storytelling parts, for me it was really obvious when the rolls were good or bad. But perhaps it's just some artistic license that the creators of the movie took, and I'm just reading too much into it, but for me it was quite obvious and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed seeing how they tried to manage this, as it is a difficult thing to describe without actually saying the words, "Oh, you rolled poorly." And I was quite curious how they went about it, and if there was intent behind those particular scenes. I think they were masterfully done. Otherwise, perhaps it was just a coincidence. But the moments that were clear for me when it came to actual roles, it was golden, so it was worth it. The characters are already pretty well established, with backstories and talents. They aren't level 1 adventurers who set out to find their path, but they aren't the demigods higher level parties feel like. This was a nice touch, as the audience was able to see how a plan comes together and falls apart in the blink of an eye, just like when you roll like crap after spending hours around the table piecing everything together, and you don't have the necessary skill to actually just bulldoze your way through everything and every encounter. So it was a nice balance. I think the party was in the mid-range level. I think 12, 14 perhaps? I don't know for sure. Maybe you have some ideas. I would love to hear your thoughts on this down below. Fair warning, spoilers ahead. What I really enjoyed was how the movie treated bardic inspiration. For me, that was perhaps one of the highlights, seeing how bards are my favorite class. The bard was not shown using magic at any point in the movie, but that was the whole point. They are a support class, the face and the voice of a group. Those who come up with a weird plan and that somehow is set into motion through sheer willpower. What I really enjoyed was how bardic inspiration was treated and represented, and I really believe it actually hit the mark. The chemistry between the party members was what made the experience all the more enjoyable, seeing how the core group was already established. For me, it was a little reminiscent of players coming and going in a D&D group, because let's be honest, I think almost everybody out there who plays D&D experienced this at one point or another. People coming in and going out of the group, finishing campaigns or just a few sessions. Hear me out. But I really liked how they portrayed it. You have two characters who share a long story together, and this is made abundantly from the get-go. Then you have two additional characters come in, both go away at one point for various reasons. It is like pausing the campaign for a little while. Then one of them returns while the fourth does not, and their PC becomes a BEG because perhaps they were assholes. But do please notice how I didn't use a double B in the title, so it wasn't BBG, it was just a BG. Following this, the party is 3 strong, but now they need some utility and a specialist, and a group member knows somebody, a friend perhaps, who joins the party. They're outsiders at first, but they play their part and excel at it and don't really understand the chemistry between the other players, but play along. This is an awesome bleed through into real life. Of course, you also have the BBEG infiltrated in the party, but that never really happens. Let's be honest, the party is almost never betrayed by someone close to them. I mean, no, never. That was pure artistic license. Who would do that to their players? Of course, what would a D&D adventure or campaign be without any DMPCs? The DMPCs selected for this adventure is a perfect match. They embody the essence of a DMPC to a T. They are there for a short while, they are very, very powerful, much more powerful than the party, perhaps the whole party combined, and they are shown, in this case, as a pinnacle of virtue. In comparison to the party, who is made up of more or less scoundrels. They are such a clear DM flex that it had me in tears. They are the means through which the DM tries a lore dump, and the party, of course, reacts as you might expect. The lore dumps are treated like around a normal table. They are only half listened to. Of course, when it comes time, the party members do remember and realize what the DM was trying to tell them through the DMPC. But again, the DMPC is there for a short while, they show the party how it's done, and it's done in a tasteful manner. In the end, essentially the party still has to save the day, not the DMPC, as it should be in any normal situation. Another spoiler ahead, I love the moment when the DMPC tries to explain what the riddle was and the sorcerer simply rolled a natural one. I mean, I'm sure most of you out there can relate to this. You trying to give your players all the information they need to power through a riddle, a puzzle, an encounter, and they just kinda listen to you, but not entirely, and they just still go their own way, and yeah, usually they roll natural ones, so that was golden. There is also a moment that I believe was one of the characters leveling up. Perhaps they reached a milestone or something, and I'm sure they boosted their stats. The idea is that I was very curious if they would tackle attunement, because it is a central part of any D&D adventure or campaign, forcing the party to choose between magical items and explaining why they can't use certain items. I'll be honest, at the beginning of my D&D career, let's call it, my D&D journey, it was very hard to explain to my players how It wasn't hard to explain how attunement worked, but it was hard to explain and to describe actually how attunement worked, how they spent that half an hour. Perhaps for many of you it comes naturally or easily, but for me it was quite difficult for some reason. The movie's approach was quite interesting, and it took me a second before I figured it out. Perhaps it was just artistic license, and I'm perhaps just reading too much into it, but hear me out. The character cannot attune to the item at first, at least for a while, until something changes, until something snaps, there's a sudden click. Tell me, my friends, what is charisma? How do you define it? I think Deea was the one who explained it best, that charisma is the power of persuasion and deception, your ability to sweet talk and intimidate, but it is so much more than that. It is your self-confidence, esteem and determination, resolve, your ability to make decisions even. And I think that this is perfectly portrayed in the movie. And the sudden change might have come from leveling up and investing a point or two in charisma. But again, I won't... No, but I bet this is it actually. This was very nicely done. Again, perhaps an artistic license, although I don't think so. But it was a nice way of describing a character overcoming a problem when it comes to attunement. Perhaps they weren't the right class, or perhaps they didn't have enough points invested in one particular stat. Okay, big massive spoilers ahead, so skip this part if you don't want to get spoiled. So, the Bard. My favorite class, the sweet-talking scoundrel who has good intentions, but let's be honest, lacks the willpower most of the times to stay true to their cause. The individual with the ideas, who manages to convince everyone that their idea is good. I loved it. They showed the classic Bard as written, I'll say. Just the bare bones Bard. I loved it. And again, the way Bardic inspiration was shown, brilliant. The Barbarian, a juggernaut that demolishes everything with ease and who takes on any city watch with no sweat. There isn't much to say here besides the fact that the rage was not shown that obvious, and I would have liked to see it more clearly. Not many lines for the Barbarian, the simple things in life that makes them happy, and of course they can use anything as a weapon. Classic and nothing more to ask for. The Paladin is shown so rigid and so set on their path and in their ways that they would not stray left or right for anything, not even when walking. Moreover, the boulder, I believe, is a metaphor. They are so sure of the path and so determined that no obstacle could stand in their way. They walk in a perfectly straight line, no matter what comes their way. And, of course, they are very rigid even in the way they speak, and they are above using vulgar speech. Yeah, the classic paladin who's holier than thou. I love the classic paladin. The wild sorcerer was very nicely portrayed, with things going wrong at the worst and best of times, making a tense situation flip on its head, adding that weird, funny wildcard element with nobody knowing what will eventually happen. The druid was shown as the classic nature activist, follower of the Wild Mother, I'm sure, who brings to the table a unique set of skills that are invaluable for the party. They are portrayed as the Swiss Army knife of the party, as they should be. The rogue, in his essence, nondescript at first, until it is revealed what subclass the movie is showcasing. But the way they are described and the archetype are spot on and perfectly encapsulate what a rogue is. You cannot ask for more. Now, as you might expect, there are a lot of spells flying around and they are simply spectacular. The battles are very well described, with each character getting their own turn to act, like around the table, but at the pace they are supposed to. The only thing I would have wanted to see was The moment when a character ponders what to do for a few seconds, like it always happens around the table while people are looking through their pages, their character sheet pages, and trying to select the best spell or the best ability or just to figure out what to do. And I would have liked to see everybody just glancing towards that individual while waiting for them to act. I think that would have made it even more relatable, but I don't know, perhaps it was in the movie and I just missed it, but I would have noticed something like that. But otherwise, it was awesome. And the piece de resistance was the use of Speak with Dead spell. And how they used it the first time, genius. I'm sure most players actually fumble it the first time they use it. And this makes it even more real and more relatable to D&D players. Oh, and magical weapons were really nicely depicted. There isn't much to say about the creatures shown in the movie. We have classics that have been around for a long time, and one of them actually reminds me of Mango when she's playing right before eating. I won't tell you which one, you'll have to figure it out for yourself. Just leave it in the comments. Let's see if you actually managed to to identify the creature I am I'm equating Mango to. Of course, the best was the owlbear, the one that sparked some debates even within my group, because of course, the people who want to play a druid, my truly, wants to be able to turn into an owlbear. Thanks, Wizards of the Coast. Thanks. The lore dumps are made in good taste and were received exactly how some players actually react to them, as I mentioned before. All groups have at least one individual like that. You know who you are, we love you, but from time to time, let the DM just tell a little bit more of the story, please, by the gods. The way selected stays true to D&D, using the DMPC, and the way it is received again stays true. And the depiction is awesome, making sure that even those who have no idea what the story is all about and whom the characters are and what the history is are still enthralled and get the big picture. And when it comes to highlights, as I mentioned, the bardic inspiration was awesomely done in my opinion. The attunement and leveling up was again a nice touch. The Speak with Dead spell was fantastic. The magic staff. Oh, and some people would also include the owlbear and the ending with the owlbear, but no, it was awesome. It was pure genius. It encapsulated the feeling D&D players finally get after defeating the BBEG after a very long struggle, at least for a while, and you just want to, you know what I mean. Just watch it and rewatch it and try to, yeah, enjoy it. It's pure bliss. It's like the cherry on top of a very, very nice, not exquisite, but very hearty cake. And of course, another of the highlights was the attraction the barbarian had for halflings and her ex-husband's attraction for Goliaths or even half giant women. Delightful. Oh, and one other highlight that is not on the screen is the fact that all around me and my friends there were people turning to one another and trying to identify what characters they could relate to in their games around their tables. That was something, that's what this is all about, genuinely. This is what this whole game is about, bringing people together and having them make unique memories that would stick with them for the rest of their lives even. Perhaps for some that might sound strange or funny or nerdy or even stupid, but you have no say in this until you've actually tried it. So after you've tried it, and really tried it, not just stumble upon a group that is made up of murder hobos and you have a poor experience. No, I mean really have a good D&D experience. Then you'll understand precisely what I'm talking about. That moment when you take down the dragon. Oh, the dragon. Oh, by the gods, the dragon was... I almost forgot about the dragon. We were surprised, to say the least, and it was insanely awesome. Insanely awesome. A day after the movie, we're still talking about that dragon. Let's just watch it and tell me what you think. So yeah, in conclusion, I sincerely believe that the movie was written by people who actually played the game, as there are all these small nuggets of gold, pure gold, that make the game worth playing, that actually made it to the screen. And I sincerely hope to see many more sequels, as this was a very fun and quirky movie. If you haven't seen the movie, I strongly recommend you do so. It is a funny movie with unlikely heroes that somehow make it by the skin of their teeth and actually save the day against all odds and against their own expectations. That is awesome. It is a very good story, and in the end, this is why we are all here, for a good story. Now, tell me what your impressions of the movie are in the comment section, as I am very curious to know if you enjoyed it as much as I did. And until next time, make sure you take inspiration from the world around you. Make sure you learn something new every day, and always keep on creating and world building amazing things. Your mind and imagination are amazing, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Oh, before you go, like, I have to do it. Subscribe, you have to do it. Share this if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, your players, your GMs, DMs, neighbors, grandparents, cousins, everybody. But only if you liked it. And if you want to see more of my lovely assistants who have become a sight for sore eyes as of late, make sure you check out TW Creative -cats channel with shorts made by my wife that have nothing to do with history, but everything to do with cat adventures. Drop by, enjoy some cat adventures, and make sure you share that too. Until next time, have yourselves a wonderful day. Cheers.